8:06. Yesterday, Birmingham City Council met to discuss its finances as the reality of large-scale cuts starts to sink in. Europe's biggest local authority are estimating cuts of some £330 million, part of a total figure upwards of £600 million that councils across the West Midlands will have to save. Unions say the Birmingham City Council workers could know by early December if plans to scrap extra payments for working weekends and unsociable shifts are to go ahead. And it seems inevitable that there will be some big changes to services. Labour opposition leader, Birmingham City Council Sir Albert Bohr, spoke to us on Monday about his concerns for the future.
What the council needs to do is have an open debate with the people of Birmingham about those services that really need to be kept and maintained at the current level. So there needs to be priorities.
Delighted to say that Birmingham City Council's Cabinet Member for Finance, Councillor Randal Brew, is with us in the studio this morning. Good morning, Councillor Brew. Appreciate you coming
Phil.
in.
Thank you for the invite.
It's been 2 weeks, obviously, since we had the comprehensive spending review. Why has it taken so long for the people of Birmingham who vote, who pay their council taxes, to hear from their council on this issue?
I share their frustration. We had the headline of the CSR some 10 days, 2 weeks ago. But behind that is a whole list of subsidiary announcements that drip out over the next few weeks. And the major ones regarding local government don't actually hit us, or we don't know the detail, until early December. And so, whilst you would expect us as a responsible council to be working on it, and we are, we don't have the finite figures as yet.
In terms of that figure we mentioned there, 330 million,
Yep.
Is that still something you're working on as a parameter?
That is, back earlier in the year, we have some extremely talented finance professionals on the council, and they did some calculations for us, and they came up with what it was likely to be, and it was getting towards those figures. As we get closer to the determination and the finite figures for the CSR, they're not moving all that much, so I would expect the final CSR to be fairly close to that figure.
OK. What do you class as a priority when you sit down and think of budgets? What do you look at and think, these are absolutely core to what we must provide?
Citizens of Birmingham are top of the list. We are here to serve the citizens of Birmingham and provide excellent services. And when you ask me, as I anticipate the next question, what are those services, I think we have a responsibility as a society to look after the more vulnerable that we have. We have an extremely efficient and caring adults and communities. Our vulnerable children's service provides an excellent service. I know it's been going through the mill with some adverse publicity recently, but there are so many good stories of work that we do with vulnerable young children, supporting them and helping them develop in later life.
So if the vulnerable, and I would take from that, and your adult services there are going to be a priority, and that suggests to me that things like your Meals on Wheels and environmental services, you would think, collecting of bins is always top of mind there. What's not a priority? What do you look at and think, OK, if we're going to cut somewhere, leisure services, for example, would they be the first that would come under the chop?
No, I mean, what we look at, Phil, is the way that we actually deliver the services. And we've been in control of the city now for 6 years, and we've actually carved, so far, 150 million a year out of the budget, and we've done it by driving efficiencies through. But efficiencies don't just happen overnight. It's a long process, and we are continuing that process. And so, I mean, the 150 million that we've actually carved out so far, people won't have seen a significant, if any, change in their service, but they will be paying a lower council tax than other authorities, and they're glad of that.
It's inevitable, though, with 330 million to make, and having sort of confirmed that's roughly the figure you're working on, there will be savings somewhere. Now, I know you're in consultation already, aren't you, with workers over things like extra payments and unsociable hours. Will that be enough to save jobs, or will it be inevitable that some jobs will have to go?
Compulsory redundancies, which I know you're tracking towards, is the last thing on the list. But we need to review what the service that we deliver, and obviously payroll is our major cost. We have approximately 50,000 employees employed by the city, and we have to save 330 million by 2013-14. So it is a structured path to that. We actually have a staff turnover of about 7 or 8%. So there's about 4,000 people leave us each year, and we have the opportunity to review whether those positions should be filled or transferred or
whatever. Is it that phrase, natural wastage, that comes to mind?
The very word.
About? Okay, all right. Because a lot of people get a bit suspicious when they hear that. They think that's used as a euphemism for laying off people and maybe sort of cutting some hours back. What sort of assurances can you give on that?
There's natural wastage where, if I refer you to the way that we've treated it over the past 12 months, for instance, there's much publicity that there's been a drop of 2,000 jobs, 2,200 jobs over the past 16 months. And I think you'll find, if you look at the figures, something approaching, I think it's less than 80 people have been declared compulsory or redundant. There's been a mixture of voluntary retirements and early retirements and so on. And we've tried to do it in a humane way, and we have consulted all along the line with our unions.
Are you seriously saying to the council taxpayers of Birmingham that you can make £330 million worth of savings through natural wastage alone?
No.
Right.
No.
So there's going to have to be some cuts somewhere.
There will be.
So when will you decide where they will be?
Right. Payroll is the major cost, I said, Phil. And if we're looking at decision times, as you've indicated before, we're looking around the December time when things start to crystallise and so on.
Why is that so pivotal? Just explain to the audience why. What happens in the month of December?
In the month of December, we dot the I's and cross the T's on our budget suggestions for 2011-12. We'll have received the CSR announcements in detail from government so we can work with finite figures, and we have the latest possible information regarding current situation that will impinge on the following year. Can I pick up, though? You mentioned cuts and so on. Payroll, as I said, is a major cost to us. It's 60-odd% of our total costs. But we're looking at other ways of actually generating income or saving money. We have a number of projects underway that we'll be reporting in the next few weeks regarding maximising income streams. You and the citizens will go around the city, and for instance, they'll see our car parks. Now, before they worry that we're going to put up car park charges, I'd like to ask you, residents, how many of our car parks actually carry significant advertising hoardings around them? Advertising hoardings earn money. Right. And we can make a lot of money. Not 330 million, but it is a contribution.
That's a hell of an advertising budget if you can find somewhere in favour.
It's that sort of thing.
We have to break for some travel news. Are you okay to stay for another couple of minutes? I have two more questions to ask, primarily about the timetable, really, that we're going to find out. And hopefully, again, that might just inform the audience a bit more about how you intend to proceed.
Yeah, delighted.
We'll break very briefly at 8:16. Johnny Palmer here for some travel news for your Wednesday 7. Councillor Randal Brew, thank you for staying with us, Councillor Brew, a Cabinet Member for Finances on Birmingham City Council. And I hear everything you've said about using things like natural wastage, the partnership working that you've referred to there, try and lessen some of the pain of these cuts. But there will be pain. £330 million saved does not come without some tough decisions, does it?
It doesn't come without some tough decisions. But before any pain reaches the front line, we are looking behind the front line as well. And we're looking very much at back office as we have before, but we are finding better ways of working, leaner and keener. But more importantly as well, Phil, that I'd like to emphasise, is we're working more with our public partners in the city. We became a pilot for the last government's Total Place. And whilst we spend £3.5 billion in the city, when you add the health service and ancillary other public authorities that operate within the city, that spend comes to £7.5 billion. And we're actually providing a lot of similar services. And we have started working together and working more effectively and talking to each other and pooling budgets and looking at what targets we're jointly trying to hit. And we're finding more effective ways of getting more bangs for our buck.
Okay, in other words. Let me just go back to this issue of timing, because you said there December you will have a better idea of what you've got to deal with. And this, I'm assuming, is because you will then know what revenue support grant and the big chunk of money you get from central government. So let's say you get to know the figure in December. How soon after that will you be prepared to say, here's our budget for adult services, here's our budget for leisure, etc., etc., down to all the different departments.
If I go backwards, the City Council meeting that approves the budget will be held on March the 1st, and that's the big public meeting where the public can come along, and it's the debate as to how we spend the money, and over the public debate how we spend the money over what areas. Working backwards, it goes through an approval process, and it will go to the City Council's cabinet sometime in February. I haven't got the precise date, but I would imagine it would be early in February to allow for that sort of timescale. Working back from that, we have there are consultations going on prior to that. So if we said towards the end of January, we actually have something that we're getting close to. I personally, and this is a personal view, not a corporate view, Phil, I would like to see the public of Birmingham involved in saying what their priorities should be. And I'd like...
And that discussion would be happening now? December? January?
Well, I mean...
When would you welcome that input?
I would welcome that input any time, because the consultation with the citizens of Birmingham, I don't think, is particularly tied to budget. We're not going to give them a budget and say we're going to spend this much. But what I would like to hear from them is what services they would like to have provided and what not. For instance, I attended a young people's forum by a young people's parliament, who were a very impressive lot of youngsters. And they were taking a survey on how much their people would be willing to pay for certain facilities within the city that are currently free. Free? Would you pay? And whatever. And that sort of thing is useful, and it's very useful, particularly when it's generated by the public as well.
Okay. So when you'd be ready to have that conversation, can we give an open invitation to yourself or a member of the cabinet, maybe the leader himself, to come on air, take phone calls and take that kind of input? Would that be something that you would welcome? And
I'm sure we'd welcome that. Yes.
Okay.
Thanks, Phil.
Councillor Brew, appreciate you coming in this way. Thank you very much indeed. Randal Brew from the Finances, the Chair of the Finances, Cabinet Member for Finances on Birmingham City Council, with us here on BBC WM. It's a slow process, it's a long process, but it is a process, and it's something that we hopefully will get you through here on BBC WM. It's 8:22.